Okay, great. So I'm Ezra. I am the chair of communications for Pride Ortho, and I will be moderating our panel discussion for tonight. And I wanted to kick things off with a just kind of a brief overview of what Pride Ortho is all about, just so that you can get a sense for all that we do as an organization. So, what Pride Ortho is, we are a community of proactive LGBTQ folks and allies in orthopedics, with our primary mission being to provide mentorship, networking, and a sense of belonging for people in our community. And one of the primary things that we like to focus on is mentorship because we have good data that shows that mentorship uh, is something that trainees value, and they value having a mentor that is of a similar background, similar kind of life circumstances. So, 72% of LGBT medical trainees thought it was important to have an LGBT identified mentor. And then 59% of trainees felt it was important to have an LGBT identified mentor specifically for career development. Sorry, the 72% was for personal development. And so, in terms of what else we do, we are involved with networking. So, we're showing up at different conferences. Some of those are listed there. We're also building industry relationships. We're fostering like research opportunities. We have committees, folks are serving on committees within Pride Ortho and then also outside of Pride Ortho, like with AOS and whatnot. And then we're also just working with other diversity groups, like the Gladden Society, RJOS, and others. And then in terms of resources and events for our members, so one of the big things that we offer our members is we have a list of inclusive programs, specifically residency and fellowship programs. And those are programs that have been vetted by people who attended those programs or are affiliated with those programs. We also offer away rotation scholarships for fourth year medical students who are doing audition rotations. We have a database of research that's being conducted by people in our community. We also provide webinars, kind of like this one. And then we also have the Pride Ortho Medical Student Initiatives, which are outreach programs for medical students. And then we spend a lot of time trying to build community. We Part of how we do that is we have the out list and the ally list, which are lists that you can opt into when you become a member, and they are a way for other members to know who is in our community. We also have newsletters that come out quarterly just to kind of hear about what we've been up to. We have social media accounts, and then we newly have a LinkedIn account. So follow us there. So that's just kind of our background on Pride Ortho and what it is that we do. And so, but the focus of tonight's discussion is really going to be on the coming out process. And we have four excellent panelists who have taken time out of their nights to be here to share more about what their process has been like and to answer any questions that you all have. But I think it would be good to just kind of kick off the discussion with each of our panelists going through and kind of introducing themselves, sharing a little bit about their background, and then you all are welcome to kind of share any kind of any additional insight in terms of your relationship to Pride Ortho, your experiences with Pride Ortho, kind of what Pride Ortho has meant to you in your orthopedic journey as well, if you want to touch on that. So we will start with Dr. Mark Schultzel. He is our current president, and so we'll let you kind of kick it off, Dr. Schultzel.
Awesome. Hey guys, how's it going? Thank you so much for being here. So I'm Mark Schultzel. I am this year's president. Uh, so, um, to me, this organization is important because it's our really first place of belonging in a field that maybe traditionally wasn't so much of an inclusive place to be. For me, I'm a current orthopedic surgeon. I specialize in shoulder and elbow surgery. I practice in San Diego, California. I'm in a large multi-specialty organization that is mostly private, and then I take on medical students, residents, and fellows from both here and internationally. And I'm sorry, Ezra, what else did you want us to ask?
No, that was perfect. That was great. Well, because we'll dive into more, but that's just a great kind of overview. So, and then Dr. Carla Bridges, one of our past board members and still very active current member. If you want to introduce yourself and tell us a little about yourself as well.
Thank you, Ezra. Good evening, everybody. Sorry, I'll turn my camera here or on here in a second. So I'm Carla Bridges. I'm a peds sports ortho surgeon at Dayton Children's Hospital in Ohio. I was kind of there from the beginning, Pride Ortho. The organization means so much to me. Because it has provided a place for a community for myself, and I've seen how it has provided a place for community for so many others over the years. Um, the way I heard about Pride Orthos, I was actually it was 2020 or 2021, and I was thinking I was looking for like a LGBTQ friendly orthopedic society, and I just could not believe that one did not exist in like 2020, 2022, 2020, 2021. And I started to ask around at a conference if anyone had heard anything, and someone told me, there's this organization that is about to actually come out or about to be developed. And I was like, well, I really want to be a part of that. So I was really excited to hear about it. And it was mainly because I saw so much potential in what the organization could offer for the orthopedic community. So did I answer all your questions, Ezra?
Yes, that's perfect. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
All right, next we've got Dr. Laura Jackson, who is a newly medical student grad and going to be starting residency. So, Dr. Jackson, if you want to tell us about yourself.
Hello, yeah. Laura Jackson just graduated a few weeks ago from KU Med, and I'm starting residency at the University of Minnesota here in a few weeks. So packing up the house and all those things. Um, I, as far as Pride Ortho is concerned, thank you. I actually heard about it from Ezra. Ezra and I went to the same medical school, so just a few years apart. So as soon as I found out that this organization existed, I became a member like immediately. And then this past year was lucky enough to be given the fellow scholarship. So I was able to travel to the academy this year and just meet an incredible community of people that are involved, and from all parts of the US, some international. And as somebody who's just like starting off my career, uh, I'm very excited to see um, just like continue my path with Pride Ortho and continue to meet people. And yeah, so very excited. Thanks for having me.
And sorry, last but certainly not least, Dr. Joshua Namm, who also is one of the newer members on our board. Dr. Namm, if you want to introduce yourself as well.
Hi, I'm Josh Namm. I'm the member at large on the Pride Ortho board. Um, I am an ortho trauma specialist at a level one trauma center in Hartford, Connecticut, but only for the next couple of months, and I'm moving to New York City to work at Lenox Hill. Um, Pride Ortho has been a great experience for me, getting to know people like me, which is quite hard to do in orthopedics, especially as a gay man. And, you know, this organization did not exist when I was a resident. And, I know a lot of people were very afraid to come out during residency. And I think that this organization gives people more of the power to do so because they see that there are people like us out there, and they can feel more comfortable being themselves and out around their colleagues. So, you know, that's why, this organization is super important to me and why I, love being involved.
Awesome. Thank you guys for introducing yourselves. So I have a few questions just to kind of get us started, but really the goal tonight is not to have my questions answered. The goal is really to have the people who are attending this, we want you to get your questions answered. So you can, if you want, you can message the host, me, the Zoom Pride Ortho account. You can message me privately if you'd like to remain anonymous, or if you want, you can message the whole group your question. And I would love to kind of filter through your questions as we go. But just to kind of get us started, I was going to ask our first question to our panelists. So we can just kind of work down the line and just start with Dr. Schultzel and so on and so forth. But Dr. Schultzel, could you share your kind of your story about coming out professionally, what that was like, and maybe what were some of the factors that led to you kind of ultimately making the decision to do that?
Yeah, sure thing. So in medical school, I think it's when I really started to realize like, oh, hey, I'm gay. And then I got into a relationship and I was deathly afraid. I was on my sub-Is and I thought, oh, surely nobody's going to want me if they find that out. So actually secretly had gotten married in California before Prop 8 while I was on my ortho sub-I. And then matched into orthopedics and then into Kansas City. And then my partner at the time was great and was with a little bit of reluctance and kicking and screaming, came out to Kansas City for the year. But then I was, I was a little bit afraid about the residency too, because hey, in the middle of the Midwest, the program director / chairman at the time was not the nicest individual. And kind of ran the residency like a military. So I thought I would for sure be on the chopping block. So I hid my partner for a year, and then after that, I felt terrible because it was my partner was great about keeping the seat, kind of keeping hidden for a year. All my classmates in residency and all the young doctors in my life knew, but all the attendings did not. And my co-residents were great about really protecting me. Then after that 1 year, I had gotten a very good reputation, became the house tap president at the residency, and I felt like I had some security. So then I kind of came out to the attendings and actually at that point to my family too. And I think I was able to do it despite the fears because at that point I was like, look, I'm financially independent now. I live in a different city. And then now I have a reputation for doing good work and being, well liked by the rest of the faculty for every other reason. So I think setting the stage was important for me, for myself. And then things actually went really well. So I was treated well overall. I think on the back end, people would still talk behind the back in the OR and make jokes and stuff, but it never really affected my daily life. I matched into an excellent fellowship and then went right back into the closet because the fellowship was a one-on-one mentorship. And I knew that my professor was relatively conservative. And so for me, I really prioritized the education and the training and really try to put that first really before myself. And at the end of the day, it was actually great. My professor knows now, and he's actually been just a really great kind of father figure and mentor. But I think it's hard. I think everybody kind of has their own worries and story. And even now, I practice in San Diego, and where you would think would be a relatively open place. I know it's in the middle of Southern California, but it actually ends up being one of the most cutthroat places to practice. And so everyone's sometimes looking for a reason to go after each other. And it actually, because of this, it actually affected my first employment. I was employed at a large managed care organization that very frequently is within the top 50 HRC places to practice. And people started to know in my department and didn't like it and really made my life difficult. And so now everything's great. I'm in my own private practice, pretty respected in the community, and it doesn't seem to be an issue. But I think for me, I always have worries in the back of my mind, is this going to affect my ability to get consulting jobs, and, reach other levels outside of my general practice. And so, I really applaud people here who are really out and proud, because I take a lot of inspiration from you, because you live unapologetically and you seem not to be bothered by that stuff. And so I wish I could get to a place where those things don't affect me. But I think, for me, professionally, I think it's really hard having to really balance both balls of like where you are professionally with things that could risk it, given how hard of an effort we put into getting to this point.
Oh, yeah, Dr. Bridges. Yeah, you're mute. Perfect.
So I kind of knew at a very young age that I liked girls. I in first grade I even asked a girl to marry me, and I think my parents always knew too. I always preferred to dress more masculine. I cried if my mom tried to put me in a dress, and it was probably in middle school when I finally kind of came out to myself. And I told one other friend of mine, but it was in high school when I finally just came out to everybody. And so I first came out to my parents and then my siblings, and it just kind of blossomed from there. And after that, I was out. I wasn't gonna hide it. I felt like I needed to hide it. I mean, yes, we come out like over and over again to people when we're meeting them for the first time, and that it can be challenging. But I've kind of always like welcomed the questions, and people's curiosity, and I honestly kind of always enjoyed challenging their thoughts or opinions on things that maybe weren't in line with mine. When it came to like professional school, when I was in medical school and I was applying for residency, I actually included my girlfriend and her mother in my personal statement, my partner at the time, in my personal statement, because her mother had a disability, and it really applied to one of the reasons why I was uh, kind of interested, in going into the field. And I felt it was important for me to share her story. In order for me to share her story, I had to explain that this was the mother of somebody that was very important to me, and it was another way for them to know that by you accepting me or inviting me an interview, that it lets me know that you're okay with the fact that that I am gay. So it kind of already gets it out there. I can put that part behind me now, and I didn't want to go to a program that wasn't going to accept me for who I am. Um, so I feel like I had for it's unless I'm completely like naive to it or blind to it, I feel like I haven't really run into many challenges being out in orthopedics. I'm sure there are things that have been said behind my back that you know, this just never got to me. But I think overall, I have felt pretty comfortable being out in the field, and I don't think it's really made it any harder for me to get into positions that I've strived to be in, find a job, get into fellowships. And I'm happy with where I'm at this point.
Yeah, I think my story is an interesting one in the sense that I'm a non-traditional medical student. Going into residency at 35, I had a career before medical school in soccer, so I both played and coached at Division 1 and professional level. And so I came to the US to play soccer. I'm originally from England, and it was in college that I realized that I was gay. Um, and I was, out with my teammates somewhat, not really with other people, not with my family. And then quickly after graduating, went into coaching in Idaho, the United States. And so that was kind of an interesting experience because you didn't really see many people from the LGBTQ plus community out there. But it was within my soccer coaching career that I found that being out in that field gave me the best opportunities, whether it was networking or just finding my community of uh, gay women coaches that we would connect and we would share information and we would have our own little conferences. And I really saw at that point there was a benefit to being out for that reason. And so I actually then went back to playing, and I played for a national team that I was kind of afraid of what the fans would do if they found out that I was gay. And so I actually went back into the closet at that time, like turned off my Instagram, made it private and everything just out of fear. And after that experience, that was when I moved to Kansas City, and I had recently gotten married to my now wife. And was continuing to coach, and that was 2019. So 2020, 2021, we know what happened with COVID. And there was just a lot of emphasis on like diversity and inclusion. And I felt like I was a person that was very sort of positioned in that field within athletics to speak about my experiences. And so finally, when I went to medical school in 2022, a similar reason in my personal statement, all of the reasons why I wanted to go to into medicine and the biggest parts of my life, one of them being that I was married, was included in my personal statement. And when applying to the University of Kansas, and obviously I got into KU and wore a ring, and so whenever I was questioned, I wouldn't say partner or anything like that. I would just say wife. And similarly, through that experience, I don't really know what people say behind my back, but for the most part, I think that it gained people who are curious, especially when people in medical school are also figuring out if they are, they're coming out the closet themselves. So I think, I came across questions. I have a good friend of mine that was in the medical field before, and she just told me, once you go into clinicals, you have to be aware that you just have to come out over and over again because someone will say, what does your husband do? And you have to decide in that moment, like, is it worth it for me to answer and say, actually it's my wife, or you kind of just like glaze over the question. And for the most part, I think I would correct people. But there are times when I'm just like, I can just move on with my day. So again, I think coming out in my experience was positive, and I used it all through interviews. If anyone asked anything related to a partner, which they're not allowed to do, but I would always mention that I had a wife. And so yeah, I kind of took that experience from coaching and my previous work and use it in a positive way.
All right. So for me, kind of an unusual story. I didn't come out to myself until I was 32. Even though, it's something I've been struggling with since I was teenager. But I finally kind of came to terms with it when I was at the very end of residency. So, I started to come out to people, the last week of residency. It kind of, after I left, it kind of spread like wildfire and people started asking me about it. And then, I started coming out in my personal life pretty quickly, to pretty much all my friends, my brothers, my parents, a few months later. Um, and then, fellowship, I don't think anybody knew that I was gay, that I worked with until I was almost done. Mainly because I really didn't know how to bring it up in conversation unless I was asked about it. I would have talked about it if anybody asked, but nobody really asked me. So it wasn't something that I knew how to talk about yet. And then, when I started my first job, it was kind of a slow coming out process to my colleagues. And even then, it was more like if they asked me, I would tell them. or I would tell them what I was doing for the weekend, and if it involved something gay, like an event, I would tell them. But the residents all knew because there was a gay resident that I ran into at a gay bar in New York City, very early on, so that was easy for me. The word spread after that. And then at my current job, I kind of decided that I was just going to be totally out and, authentic and comfortable with who I am from the very beginning. So for the last 5 years or so, I've been, very out and very much myself at work. And, I'll talk freely about, what's going on in my life. And I think that, one thing I've learned is that people seem to be very drawn to that authenticity. Even the broiest of ortho bros seem to be very, very drawn to that, drawn to me, and me being myself. And they are sometimes fascinated by certain aspects of gay culture, and I found that to be very surprising and very, pretty awesome to to be a part of. And so, for me, the coming out experience has been extremely positive, and I think it's made me a much more likable person. And I think people are drawn to authenticity, and people are drawn to you when you are, more yourself. And it's kind of been a good thing for my career in some ways too, because me being gay and wanting to change the culture of orthopedics, especially orthopedic trauma, and make myself more visible to help other people, and to advocate. It's gotten me here on the board of Pride Ortho. It's gotten me on the diversity committee of the OTA, which is a stepping stone to other career goals that I have in academics. So it's been a really great experience, and I think that it may not be the same for everybody, but I think always best to be yourself.
Well, you unknowingly did a perfect segue for us, because my next question was going to be about what you all have experienced in terms of the benefits of being out professionally, and then also if you could speak to maybe some of the challenges that you have encountered.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's definitely like a double-edged sword. So I think, to Josh's point, living authentically is much more relaxing. You feel like you don't have to always have your guard up. You can just be yourself and be just like everybody else, which is nice. And then I think also it allows you to let other people in, so you can have deeper relationships with your friends and colleagues because you have nothing to hide. The challenges are, there are still institutions where people who are at the top, may still have a problem with it. So then that can sometimes be limiting for your opportunities or can create a problem, for you. So I think wherever you are and whatever your situation is, I think you need to take stock of what you're just really just situational awareness to figure out, hey, where you are, is it safe for you to be doing this? Do you have a support system around you that, if you are able to live out and open, you have people that are trusted friends and colleagues that are there to be your allies. And then, you can live a happy and fulfilling life in your profession. But I think it really takes like that situational awareness to figure out where you are. So I'm thankful to hear that all of my colleagues are on this call have been able to find these great opportunities at living and seem really happy. That means that we really made progress in a positive direction.
Yeah, I'd say I echo that, and that the benefit I think of being out is that it really takes the weight off. I'm very relaxed. I'm happy that everybody knows. I bring my partner Jessica with me to any events that significant others are invited to, and I don't feel like awkward about it. They have completely welcomed us here at Dayton Children's Hospital. They ask about her. They wonder if she's coming. So it's just been nice because we feel like we are, a part of the Dayton Children's Ortho family. Um, and I would say some of the challenges, I think still come from, you would think I would have gotten used to it by now, but it's because I dress more masculine. I still get confused sometimes as if I'm a boy or a girl, and sometimes it can get really just annoying because I'm just like, are you serious? Like, but if people just don't spend a lot of time around the gay community and they're not used to seeing how some gay women may dress, whether they're fem, stem, or stud or whatnot, then yeah, they're just not used to seeing that, and so I'm not gonna lie. The other day I saw a stud and I was like, "Whoops!" I really thought, I thought that was a guy. So I was like, I still do it too, but it gets annoying sometimes, and I've really just had to like stop letting it bother me so much because it's like they don't know. Sometimes over the phone, which has nothing to do, I guess, with like being gay. My voice is a little bit deeper, and over the phone, I get mistaken to be a man all the time, and like I've really just had to let it go because it happens all the time. So, but that has nothing to do, I don't think, with me being gay. So that's probably the more challenging thing is like letting those like they're not. I don't think they're small things, but just they're just annoyances. Just letting that stuff go and trying not to let it bother me so much. But like I said, I feel again, maybe I'm just naive, maybe I'm just not paying attention. I feel like truly I haven't had any like major issues or incidents that have happened that have really been that like had a negative effect on me.
Yeah, I think I would say a lot of the similar, like the benefits are definitely just community, feeling like, my wife is obviously, I take her to all the events and for me being a gay woman with orthopedics being the way it is with a lot of men, I feel like we fit in the way that she has, in medical school, I would have, friends that are guys and she would be friends with their wives. And so, we've never really had an issue fitting in from that perspective. And which funnily enough, actually my residency class is 6 women and 2 guys. So we're kind of going the opposite, and that's something for me to navigate there. But as far as the negatives, I actually find it harder to be out. Um, and this sounds interesting, but I find it harder to be out in everyday life, like with my partner versus you know, talking about it. And so similarly, I think, if I was to classify myself, I'm definitely like sporty, a little bit more masculine. And so just like the everyday, people taking a double look, I'm 6 feet tall, so then there's that part of it. Me going into a women's bathroom, but being with my wife out and about, like just, being worried about what would be said or what could be done. Um, but again, that's for me, that's outside of medicine. And I haven't started residency yet, so I feel like the becoming tired of coming out over and over again, I think is going to hit a little bit harder once I am working more hours in the hospital. But um, yeah, I think just the normal things that I think people worried about being in the LGBTQ plus community are things that I worry about. But I still don't go into the closet. Like I still address that and talk about it with people if they ask. So yeah, hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, for me, the biggest benefit, I kind of already talked about it, but my relationships with people at work are so much better because I am being authentic and because, I'm out to them and that's part of what they like about me, to be honest. And so, overwhelmingly, this has been a positive experience. Um, the the I would say the biggest challenge is how to talk about it with patients. I mean, not really, bringing it up in conversation, but the whole thing about you know, you're married or you have a wife at home or things like that. And I'm single, so that's kind of easy for me to talk about. But yeah, those are still awkward moments for me. Um, and I'm kind of in terms of like challenges at work, I'm kind of like take me or leave me type of person. So if somebody doesn't, if somebody doesn't support me because I'm gay, then, it doesn't really bother me. So that's it.
All right, perfect. Okay, so next I want to kind of shift gears a little bit, and I would like to hear if you guys have any advice for medical students, residents, I mean, even attendings, who are considering coming out.
Yeah, it's a really good question, Ezra. So I think at the end of the day, it's a deeply personal event for everybody. So you have to figure out first who you are. So people like Josh and myself, we came out like a lot later than someone like Carla or Laura. So it's like sometimes it takes that time to figure out like where do you fit into all this. And then I think it's just really important to surround yourself with friends and family and a support system that understands and is going to be supportive, because I think it's really challenging to do it alone. And then take stock of your situation, and timing, I think, plays a part into it, because I think, and there's no one good way to do it. So, I think that that's how you have to really figure it out for yourself. It's not just like pulling a trigger and you get like shot out of a cannon. Like it's a process, and then you have to keep doing that process over and over again. So you have to figure out when it's like time, place, and opportunity. And that's kind of the way that I consider it. I maybe think of things a little bit differently than some of the other folks here. I think of everything as opportunity versus opportunity cost. And my main goals are fulfillment, safety, and happiness. And so, like, those are my criteria for when I decide to do anything really in life. And so, I think this is really no different. But I think, again, you got to do you and make it personal for you. So none of our stories translate probably into stories of anybody else on this call. Everybody, you all have your own individual story that makes this process unique for you.
Yep, I agree. I think that you have to do it when you're ready. It really has to come from a place where you have I think you really need to come out to yourself first. You need to process that, kind of, sit with it, talk to others. And then when you get to the place where you feel like you're ready to come out to others, you gotta think about how you want to do that. Do you want to start with family, friends, people that are closest to you, and then slowly increase the number of people around you that know? But I do think you should do it when you feel like you're ready to come out, and not from pressures of other people. Um, that'd be my advice.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with everything that's being said. I think um, if I go from my, most recent experience, which is applying to residency, which I think, if you're a medical student on here, um, and you're thinking about coming out during that process, I think that it's definitely doable, especially the way that orthopedics is now with the signals. I would definitely join Pride Ortho, and there's a list of residencies that um, have tend to be accepting of people in the community, and when I went through the process and decided, what kind of information I wanted to give while I was going through residency interviews, I actually had a friend who had kids who decided not to disclose that they had kids. So there's, different different types of decisions from different people. But I think for me, I just tried to do my research as much as possible before picking my 30 programs, leaning on people that I knew from this organization, as well as just mentors, knowing that I wanted to go somewhere that was going to accept me and be okay with me being out. And like I said, I don't feel like I had any issues. So if you are thinking about coming out and you're worried about the residency process, um, I think that you don't necessarily have to be if you have the right people there to help you go through it. So, and it was a positive process for me, and I just really enjoyed like being myself through that.
Yeah, I would say coming out later in life, I didn't really have to deal with coming out during residency because it's all kind of happened the last month of residency. But once I finally came out to myself and then to other people, to use a quote from Love Simon, it felt like I could finally breathe. And so, for me, it was a very important part of my journey to come out to people pretty quickly because, you know, partially making up for lost time, but I felt like I could finally be myself. Um, but I know there's a lot of pressure to match in a specialty that is very competitive, and so you basically do everything you can to get a spot, and if that to you feels like you can't come out, then you shouldn't really feel pressure to do so at that time. I mean, it's whatever feels right to you in that given moment. At the same time, if you feel like you, you know, would rather not match than go to a place that wouldn't accept you for being gay, then maybe you feel like you should talk about it so that you end up at a place that, is a better match for you. So, everybody's different, and it kind of just whatever you do what feels right to you. Don't feel pressured.
Yeah, and so kind of along the residency application vein, for folks who are going through the interview process, and do you guys have any thoughts about how maybe individuals should respond if they are asked an inappropriate question or if they're receiving any kind of negative feedback about their identity, and and then also if you have had any kind of negative interactions, either through disclosure during residency or in your career, or maybe negative interactions with patients, how have you kind of addressed some of that side of things?
So advice for the people that are doing their interviews for residency, et cetera. I think, at the end of the day, like when you're doing your sub-Is and things like that, I always tell the students that work with me to be yourself, because who else will you be? And nowadays, I think you have to, you have to kind of take your power back in the sub-I process. So you have to figure out for yourself, is this a place where I'm going to be at my maximum learning potential and going to be able to thrive in residency? And I feel like we don't talk about that. We usually just talk about like, because the match rate is so low, like anywhere that'll take me, I'll go. But I think you have to, for yourself, kind of take back that power and be like, through my authenticity and through being myself, I can see if we're a good fit for each other. And you'll find that good fit. There are now enough programs that are very supportive of our community. And within this organization, a lot of us are in academic locations. So it's another way that we can advocate for each other. So it's kind of like people power. And so I'd say like take pride in that and then seek out residencies and fellowships where you're going to maximize your potential. I think in terms of like negative interactions, I think like I alluded to at the beginning of this, yeah, like it actually at one point almost affected my ability to sit for my board exam. So my partners at my first job were not real happy with it, and actually like wrote negative things in my part two of the boards. And so I got deferred for a year, and then it happened again. And the ABOS had to come out to my practice and interview a bunch of people and give me a mock board exam. And it was interesting. Christy Weber, who was like the AAOS president at the time, was actually a huge help. I called her asking for like advice about what to do and telling her my story, and she was very upset and talked to the boards. And then they came and did this thing and this mock exam, and at the end of the exam, both the examiners said, "Hey, can we take you out to dinner? We wanted to talk to you." And they said, "We're not supposed to do this, but we wanted to apologize. This very clearly was because you're gay, and you have no quality issues. The other departments love you. Your nursing staff likes working with you. Your MIP scores are the highest in town. This is absolutely unacceptable." And so I think now, at least within like AAOS and ABOS, I think there's an understanding that this is, those type of negative experiences are not okay. And so I can only hope that it will continue to get better. And I really feel like it is. I mean, every person I talk to, who's part of our community in places of academia and in residencies and in medical school are telling me that things get better and better every year. So I think we're on the right path and right trajectory. And so I hope that, and that's actually one of the reasons why I joined this organization. I tend to be, much more of a private guy. And I would rather not be the guy waving the flag for everybody. But I feel like for me, telling my story and also showing how things and being a part of a way to make things better can prevent any of you from having experienced what happened to me. I think it's a winning thing. So I think a little bit of exposure on my part is a small price to pay for that.
Oh, that's infuriating. I'm sorry that happened to you, Mark. But glad it all worked out. Um, so I would say so. If you're in an interview for residency and they ask an inappropriate question, you have the option to either um, n- you can basically say you can try to be a politician in the moment and try, answer the question without actually answering the question and kind of work around it, and answer it in a way that you're comfortable with answering it. Or if that a question really like turns you off from the program altogether and you were like, I wouldn't come here anyway, then you could in a professional way say something, and usually you can just say something along the lines, I don't really feel comfortable answering that question. Do you mind asking me another one? Um, as far as like how far up you would want to like, I guess escalate the fact that they've asked an inappropriate question really would just come from, how do you feel like it affected you personally, and how much of a battle do you want to, fight? I think there's some things that you probably have to let go. Some things that you're just gonna have to like roll off your back. But if it's something that is truly offensive and has really bothered you to the core, especially if you are already in residency, it is okay to start going through the proper channels, to have that issue or that have that incident addressed, whether it's going to HR, whether it's going to your program director, program coordinator, and so that someone will address the issue and that it can be taken care of. And sometimes things just work themselves out. Like what happened in Mark's situation is that, making a phone call to the president of AOS at the time, ultimately what came out of it is not only did he get to take his boards, but he also got an apology out of that. They recognized that the people that were telling him that he couldn't, that he wasn't qualified to come and sit for the board were wrong, and they did the right thing. And it really means a lot when it comes from people in those positions. So, but it's a tough, tricky situation to be in. To be asked a question, you're in this vulnerable place where you're like, you don't want to answer in a weird way or wrong way, or, you know, because you're trying to get into one of the toughest fields of medicine. Um, and I recognize that, and I don't think there's an easy answer.
Yeah, I think um, like for me, going through the application process, I believe either in the hobbies or my personal statement or something I'd mentioned that I'd had a wife. So I didn't necessarily get any inappropriate questions that, came up because of that. I had more inappropriate questions like, where are you going to rank us kind of situation, which, was a similar level of awkwardness, and having to try and answer that. Going through the sub-Is, if you're planning on doing sub-Is, for me, I really wanted to be in a city because I knew that was like where there was more safety. And so I did my sub-Is in Chicago and in Minneapolis. And it was it was pretty easy to gauge just going through the sub-I experience, like first with the residents, if it comes up, you don't necessarily have to say it. Does it feel safe in this scenario? And as far as attendings are concerned, like for the most part, you're in a surgery or you're in clinic. They're not really, if they ask you a question, about your life, or, tell me about yourself, I think in my experience, genuinely, they were actually interested in that. And so we would have conversations and it was a positive experience for me. And those that really didn't ask questions, maybe those were the ones that I didn't discuss it with. And I think as far as like negative, situations that have happened to me, I think it, there's definitely a power dynamic being a medical student, trying to interview for a residency spot. And I remember one situation where it was like an older attending at one of the places that I was at, sort of heard somehow that I was married, and went on a long kind of tangent about my husband and this, that, and the other. And I kind of had to make the decision to sort of say, actually it's my wife. And that was quite an uncomfortable position to be in, because I think you don't want to make anybody feel awkward about it, and or have any reason that they remember you for a bad, something bad. But I think I said that, and then I remember the residents right away just sort of commented after the surgery and were like, sorry about that, he tends to ask those questions. And um so again, if you're going on sub-Is and aways, you can definitely gauge that. And like I said, if you're really concerned about your safety and you want to be out, there's definitely places that are better than others. There's programs that are better than others, and you can do your research and use your network to help you sort of avoid those situations that might occur.
Yeah, I think this is a tough subject, and I've talked about it with some of my mentees, but I think whatever you decide, however you decide to approach this, just think, you know, long and hard about how you want to answer these questions and what you're comfortable saying before you go in, and then, answer in whatever way feels right to you. Like I said, if you want to be out and you don't want to be in a place that doesn't accept you, then, you know, then you can answer, you can feel free to answer truthfully and talk about your partner, etc. Um, but if you feel like you don't want to say anything about it, then you can find a way to dodge the question, or say, do what Carla said and say, can you ask me another question? Um, so, and it's a tough thing, tough situation to be put into, but I think in a lot of ways, answering truthfully can work, you know, and talking about, your sexuality and your partner, etc. I think that, for some people that could actually work in your favor. So you never really know where you're going to land with your answer, but I think just go in with the plan and, feel confident in what you've decided, and hopefully, everything, hopefully, like I said, hopefully it works out in your favor.
Great. Well, thank you all for answering the kind of one of the trickier subjects related to being out. We've got 5 minutes, so I haven't received any questions in the chat. So I just want to kind of remind folks that if you have a question you want to put in the chat, or if you want to unmute yourself and ask your question, now would be an okay time. And if we don't end up getting any questions, then I'll just have oh, good, we did. We got a question. All right, go for it, Amir.
Hey, thank you so much for your time. I had a quick question. Do you think it's better to come out after getting into residency? I know that Mark briefly answered this question, but I think it's a little bit different question for gay men and LGBT members who are not men, because of the cliches in orthopedics. For example, in the program that I'm a research fellow at right now, I know that most of the faculty are kind of homophobic. So do you think, based on your experience, it will significantly decrease my chances for getting into a residency program, and it's a better move to come out later, or not?
So I think it goes into the strategy, Amir. So, and looking at the program. So, if you're planning any of the programs and where we know are friendly, or there's people who are on this, on this call or at that program, you're likely in a safe space. But I don't know, the way that I think about these sort of things is like, and that's kind of the way I think about everything in life. Like my personal life is nobody's business. It's like, I think of it as a gift if I share my personal life with you, because it means that you're important enough to me that I want to tell you things about me. Otherwise, it ain't none of your business. Like, saying nobody has the right to be eligible to receive that information. So I think about it as like a gift when I give it to you. And so that's kind of my thought process on it. I think to Josh's point earlier, I think you have to figure out like how it's going to affect you, and then checking your comfort level with it. So maybe if you're applying to your program, like, is it really helpful for them to know? And is it going to make you feel better if they know? If those two answers are yes, then go for it. If you feel like it's not going to make you feel better that they know, and it might put you at risk, then hey, wait till you're in, maybe, and then you're safe. Like once you're in, you're in. Like, and nowadays it's a lot harder to get rid of one of us because of this. And so, again, I think it just plays up to the strategy.
Thank you.
I do think that, to your point, that gay men do face challenges given the kind of bro-y culture of orthopedics, and lots of homophobic microaggressions are kind of directed at gay men. And so, I do think that some people come off as way more homophobic than they actually are just because they're so used to saying these things. And so you perceiving that they are, it may not actually affect your ability to get into that program. They just kind of have this, ingrained way of thinking. And I think that for like every 10 programs that there are that you might interview at, maybe one or less is actually really going to have a problem with it and select you based on that. Because I feel like programs are becoming a lot more accepting as they become more diverse. Yes, there's going to be plenty of programs that you may hear about that, you think to yourself, oh, this place definitely, I don't want to talk about it. But I do think that most programs these days have kind of the culture has changed somewhat, that I would hope that it's not as big of a problem as it used to be. But maybe that's just me being optimistic.
Well, I want to respect everybody's time, so it's just about 9:30 Eastern. And I want to give a special thank you to our panelists for being here, for offering insights, for being vulnerable, sharing your stories. Um, the impact of you sharing those stories goes far and wide beyond even just this Zoom room tonight. So just really want to express my sincere gratitude for that. And then also just want to thank the folks who came virtually to be here. You give us the energy and the motivation and the desire to continue to provide these kind of webinars. So I really just don't want to underestimate the impact that it has to see a whole Zoom room full of people here. So thank you all for that and for making Pride Ortho what it is. So with that, we'll go ahead and sign off for the night. But stay tuned. We have 2 more webinars for Pride Month. And so we've posted those on social media. So stay tuned for those. And we would love to see you out for those as well.
Great job, Ezra. Thank you all for